Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert and Care Bear with fangs, Lani Diane Rich.
And I'm film scholar and hunk of burning something or other, Noelle LaCroix. And we're here today to talk about Halloween, the 6th episode of season 2.
Halloween aired on October 27th, 1997, and was written by Carl Ellsworth and directed by Bruce Seth Green. This is Carl Ellsworth's only writing credit for Buffy, which is kind of sad. I liked Halloween. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I think the writing is pretty good on Halloween. So
the writing's pretty good. The narrative is a little slow moving, but it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm glad this guy came in to go ahead and do an episode for us.
Yeah, and most recently, I guess, wrote the Goosebumps movie with Jack Black, which was not good, but better than I expected. So
sure.
There you go. All right. If this is your first episode of Still Pretty, we are so glad you're here, but you should know that at any point in the show, we may talk about anything that happens in any of the 7 seasons. So spoilers are everywhere. So brush up on your ambush tactics and vampire beheading techniques, and let's go on patrol. In Halloween, Buffy spends the night taking out a vampire in a pumpkin patch and shows up late for her date with Angel at the Bronze. Cordelia tries to move in on Angel, but Angel only has eyes for Buffy. Still, Buffy's frustrated with her life.
But who am I kidding? Dates are things normal girls have. Girls who have time to think about nail polish and facials. You know what I think about? Ambush tactics. Beheading. Not exactly the stuff dreams are made of.
Buffy, Willow, and Xander are forced to volunteer to take kids trick-or-treating, and costumes are mandatory. Buffy and Willow talk about how little Buffy knows about Angel and how frustrating it is to not have years of social media to pour through. Let me tell you, Buff, that's a mixed bag. Anyway, they break into Giles' office and get at the Watcher diaries, which tell the tale of days past and the kind of women Angel knew.
Must have been wonderful. Put on some fantabulous gown and go to a ball like a princess. And have horses and servants and yet more gowns. Yeah. Still, I think I prefer being able to vote.
At the costume shop, Buffy tries to get Willow to sex it up at Halloween because it's the only time women can be sexy without repercussions, and fuck the patriarchy. We'll talk about that later. But Willow isn't comfortable with the idea. Xander chooses a soldier costume, and Buffy selects an old-timey dress. Meanwhile, Spike is holed up in the warehouse watching videos of Buffy fighting to prepare himself to take her down.
She's tricky. Baby likes to play. You see that? Well, she stakes him with that thing. That's what you call resourceful. Rewind it again.
Later at Buffy's, the girls are getting ready. Buffy is an 18th century aristocrat, and Willow as a sexy and uncomfortable version of Willow. Willow grabs a sheet, cuts out eye holes, and opts to ghost things up instead. At school, they are assigned kids to take trick-or-treating, and Cordelia talks to Oz, which isn't really narratively significant. I just wanted to use this clip.
Hey, Cordelia. She's like a great big cat.
In a dark room, the costume shop owner performs a chaos ritual, and things are about to get weird. Outside, everyone turns into their costumes. Little kids become demons, Xander becomes an actual soldier, and Buffy becomes an 18th century girl who doesn't know she's a slayer. The only one who is still a version of herself is Willow, and she's got her work cut out for her trying to convince Xander and Buffy of what's actually going on.
Buffy, are you hurt? Buffy. She's not Buffy.
Who's Buffy?
Oh, this is fun.
Cordelia, who got her outfit from a different shop, is fine, and Xander rescues her from a wolf boy chasing her outside Buffy's house. Willow tells them to stay holed up while she goes to get Giles. She and Giles figure out that it's about the costumes that they got at a place called Ethan's. At Buffy's house, Angel shows up, and when he turns into a vampire while fighting a vampire that somehow snuck into the house, Buffy screams and runs.
Do you hear that, my friend? Somewhere out here is the tenderest meat you've ever tasted. And all we have to do is find her first.
Willow and Giles rush to the costume shop and find Ethan. Giles sends Willow to find the others. Larry, a kid from school dressed as a pirate, attacks Buffy in an alleyway, but Cordelia and Angel find her and rescue her. Meanwhile, Spike is trolling the streets with a gang of child demons looking for Buffy. Back at the shop, Giles confronts Ethan. They knew each other back in the day, and it turns out Giles has a past, y'all.
It's quite a little act you've got going here, old man.
It's no act. It's who I am.
Who you are. The Watcher. Sniveling, tweed-clad guardian of the Slayer and her kin. I think not. I know who you are, Rupert, and I know what you're capable of. But they don't, do they? They have no idea where you come from.
As the kids hole up in an abandoned warehouse fighting off demons, Giles beats up Ethan to get the information on how to break the spell. Spike finds all of them in the warehouse and goes after Buffy, who is crying and scared with no idea what's going on. Finally, Ethan tells Giles that he can break the spell by busting up the statue. Just as Spike's about to bite Buffy, his crew of demons turns into kids. Buffy becomes Buffy again, and she beats him up. Spike runs away, Ethan disappears from town, and as Oz drives home in his van, he sees Willow restored to life, but wearing her sexy garb as she crosses the street in front of him.
Who's that girl?
Halloween! Okay, so Noelle, tell me, what'd you think about Halloween?
I really, really like this episode.
It's a fun episode.
I like it so much. Well, and I always love a good, people don't know who they are.
Oh, right.
Episode.
Mm-hmm.
That always works for me.
Yeah.
I really, really love seeing who people are when they're not themselves, I think.
Yeah. It's kind of like there's sort of a bizarro world element to it, where everything is not the way that it ordinarily is. And I love Bizarro World. Bizarro
Worlds are excellent. Mm-hmm. And we advance some of the plots a little bit.
Yeah.
Even as we're doing this Bizarro World thing with Buffy and Angel get advanced, Willow gets to do all the things, which is just so wonderful. Slowly building the Xander Cordelia dynamic.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We bring Spike back previously on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We have to remind ourselves of what's going on with Spike.
Like we're going to forget Spike. I mean, please.
Right. Oh, yeah. There was this vampire who came to Sunnydale. Yeah. Right. But I really, really enjoy it. And there's just so much to talk about. So I don't know. What do you think? What do you want to start with?
Well, let's go ahead and start with the most amazing thing for this whole episode, which I think we have to agree is Willow, right?
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. I love everything about Willow in this episode. Every single thing. I love Willow trying so hard to do the right thing.
Yes.
We know that Buffy struggles with ideas of being a real girl, which is an idea that I still can't totally wrap my mind around, but I kind of wanted to devote an entire episode of the podcast to it because it's really, really crunchy and neat and I just love it. But Willow is definitely also at odds with who she thinks she should be and who she actually is. Mm-hmm. When Buffy and Willow are looking at the drawing of the girl in the Watcher's Diaries, Willow's sitting there going, she's like a freak, a circus freak. Yuck. She's trying so hard to be a good friend to Buffy and say the right thing. Mm-hmm. And the look she gives Buffy of please tell me I'm being a supportive friend here. Right. I love it so, so much. But then of course she says, Buffy's fantasizing about what this life would be like. And Willow says, still, I think I prefer being able to vote.
I know, which is one of my favorite things of all time. I love when she says that.
It's so great. And I love that, here they are sitting together and reflecting on identity.
Yeah.
And Willow zooms forward to the future. She says, or I will prefer it when I'm old enough.
Yes.
And meanwhile, Buffy is thinking, kind of like a preschooler fantasizing about being a princess, gowns, balls, horses, more gowns. And I wonder if Buffy here is sort of grasping at a childhood that she's not allowed to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, because when you think about it, like Willow absolutely has it right. And we see this later when Buffy says, I wasn't raised to understand things. I was raised to be pretty and marry somebody, maybe a baron, right?
Yes.
That what it is this. It's this kind of idealized space in which women objectify themselves so the men can stay busy doing other evil shit, right? Because objectifying women just takes so much goddamn time, right? Just get the women to do it to themselves, And so we have this wonderful contrast because Buffy is idealizing all of the things that she doesn't get to do, but yet she gets to live every day in her power.
Right.
Which is something that most women don't necessarily have. They don't have that power. They may have the ability to wear the pretty dresses and marry rich or whatever. But it doesn't give you access to power. Now, Willow is looking at her power, like the power that she has as a woman that they didn't have back then, which is the power to vote, to have your voice heard, to say what you want in your representation, And it's one of those things, like voting is one of those things that people look at and they're like, ugh, it's boring. It's not interesting, whatever. But like, it's power, So it's interesting because Buffy is empowered by this sacred duty calling, and it's a shitty empowerment. I mean, it's not something she had a choice in. It's not something that she would have chosen. And so she is kind of fantasizing about all of the things that power takes away from her. The wearing of the pretty dresses and the doing the normal girl things, and not having to think about things too much, And Willow is looking at all of that stuff and saying, no, I want the power. And I kind of love that reflection of the two of them, next to each other. And it's a different kind of power that Willow's talking about, but it's still about power. And it's about power that is often and has been, historically until very, very recently denied to women, So I kind of loved that whole thing. There was so much packed inside that tiny little interaction. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Cordelia comes in. And of course, Cordelia is like the third point on this really interesting triangle of femininity that we have on the show at this point, where she's standing there doing her makeup in the mirror as she's talking to them about Angel, and Buffy and Willow both say, he's a vampire.
Yeah.
And Cordelia, I love Cordelia's reaction. Oh, sure, he's a vampire.
Right.
Yeah, tell me another one. But I love that we've got this kind of adult femininity versus a more, I'm tempted to say childish, but I don't think that's exactly right. Except that then, of course, we reverse it with, Buffy says to Willow, you're never going to get noticed if you keep hiding. You're missing the whole point of Halloween. And Willow says, free candy,
right?
Which is like this very little kid approach to the holiday. She's not interested in what Buffy tells her is the point of Halloween, which is getting dressed
an
up.
Excuse to dress sexy.
There are several. How do I want to express this? Can you feel the rage? Here it comes.
Yeah, no, I had it too. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are several moments in this episode and several moments in the show as a whole, but in this episode in particular, where I look at it and I think, wow, this really should feel dated. We should be watching this going, oh yeah, well, that was 20 years ago, and it shows. But this idea that women have not only the opportunity, but the obligation
Yes.
to be sexy on Halloween. That's still so
Right.
pervasive and so effective.
And what she says is that this is come as you aren't night. This is the night that you're allowed to be sexy without repercussions, right? Without somebody calling you a whore, without somebody calling you a slut, without somebody making a judgment about what kind of girl you are. This is the night that you're allowed to be sexy. You know, first of all, Willow has no interest in being sexy. Like,
yes,
that's
we'll
not
get to
who
that
she
in a minute.
is.
I love it.
She's not interested in it. But Buffy is like, you can do this. This is, like she's talking about you're never going to get noticed. You can't hide. All of this stuff. And Willow has no interest in any of that. I mean, let's not forget, what was it, 2 weeks ago? She went to the school dance at the Bronze, dressed up in Inuit garb, which, by the way, we didn't call out everything that was a problem in Inca Mummy Girl, but somebody was talking about the use of Eskimo and how it is considered a slur, and it is actually Inuit garb. And yes, absolutely. It's just that if we had called out everything specifically in Inca Mummy Girl, we would still be recording now. So we just want to say we recognize that that's not good. But anyway, so there she is. She's covered completely from head to toe, in September in California, right? In Inuit garb. Because that's the kind of thing that appeals to her. Like, I don't think it's that she wants necessarily to hide herself. I don't feel like she's shamed. But I think that she doesn't want to be to play this game, this I have to be so sexy game.
Yes, definitely. So I love the scene with Buffy and Willow at Buffy's house. They're getting ready.
Yeah.
Willow, Buffy says, Willow, come out. You can't hide in there all night. And of course, Willow is in the closet, which I love.
Right.
And Willow comes out and she says, Buffy's complimenting her on how great she looks. And she says, but this just isn't me.
Uh-huh.
And she's not, it's not, I don't look good. It's not, I don't, it's not, she's not looking in the mirror critiquing her body. It's not about how she looks. It's about how she wants to present herself to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Buffy says, the doorbell rings, Buffy says, you ready? And she stammers, oh, okay, which I just love so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then Buffy says, I can't wait for the boys to go nonverbal when they see you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the last straw for Willow. That is the point at which Willow decides, nope, she's going to wear the ghost costume instead.
Mm-hmm.
Because she draws the line at being objectified. Like, she's willing to humor Buffy, fine, I'll put on the costume of whatever, sexy Willow. A little preview of Vampire Willow, perhaps.
Perhaps, yes.
Yeah, well, her makeup is very similar, and I'm sure that some of that is just that's what that's what our makeup team decided looked good on Allison Hannigan for TV.
Right.
But I love that it's not she's going to humor Buffy. She's going to dress up, but once it's about the boys seeing her and their reaction to her in this outfit, that is where she puts the ghost costume on.
Yeah.
Because she's not she's not going to play into this patriarchal ideal that if a woman is conventionally attractive, as Willow and Allison Hannigan are, she owes it to society, which is really men, to show that off. This idea that hiding, that covering herself is a bad thing, that she's somehow doing a disservice to herself and others, that her job is to be on display for others to see her, and she's just having none of it.
Right. And then what I really like too is that we have this whole process throughout this episode, where she becomes the ghost, right? She no longer has the sheet. So she is, dressed like this, Willow the ghost. She goes out. She fixes everything. She basically she's the only one who knows what's going on. She tells everybody what to do. She goes and she gets Giles. She figures out that it was the costume shop with Giles. She sends Giles off to, take care of Ethan Rain. Then she comes back and gathers everybody up and is running everything because Buffy doesn't know what's going on and Xander thinks he's a soldier, So we've got all of these things pulled together that Willow is the one who is running the show. And then at the end, she comes back to life after the spell is broken, right? She wakes up on the porch. She's in the ghost costume. And then she pulls it off and puts it away. And the thing is that she's wearing what she's wearing and she's comfortable in her own skin, not because it's about somebody seeing her, but it's about her just owning herself. Like she goes from disempowered to empowered, and we show it in these two sides of this costume. And the fact that the empowered part of her embraces the quote unquote sexy Willow thing, right? But it's not even that she's embracing the sexy Willow thing. She's just like, you know what, I don't need this big huge sheet. I don't need to be encumbered by this. I'm fine if somebody sees me, whatever. And then of course at the end, Oz sees her. Right? She doesn't realize he's seeing her. But Oz says, who's that girl? But that's the exact same thing that he said when he saw her in the Inuit costume, covered up everything except her face. So the fact that Oz sees her, it's not the sexy thing. It's the Willow thing. He sees Willow. Like he doesn't care if she's covered head to toe or if she's, in the thing. And the only time that he doesn't see her is when she's got the ghost costume on and it's just eye holes. I mean, and he doesn't realize that it's her. That's the only time that he's not completely entranced by her. And so I thought that was kind of interesting because even though we have Willow in the end abandoning the sheet, abandoning the thing that she hid under, and of course being noticed by a man, it is not an objectification, and she is not embracing sexy. She's just saying, I don't need to hide under things. I can be whatever I want.
Yeah, it's much more about being unencumbered and because the way that she walks, her stride across the street is so wonderful. She's standing tall and walking because she's solved everything. I mean, she's amazing.
She
in
ran
this episode,
the show.
in terms of, well, she's not only is she the only one who knows what's going on, but she figures out how to talk to Xander and Buffy when they're not themselves. No guns. That's an order.
Right.
And then, she's the one who figures out to ask Buffy what year it is.
Right.
She figures it out so quickly because she knows what language to use. She's using the power of her intelligence, which is really where her superpower is at this point, to lead everyone. And it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I have to disagree with you. I think Oz is enchanted by her when she's wearing her ghost sheet at school.
Really? He didn't seem to notice her at all.
They do that little dance. They try to pass each other. They do the, you go right and I go left and no. And then he kind of looks like, like that was intriguing. Like, it's not a big
I didn't
moment,
notice the look back. I saw him just walk away and not notice her at all.
Yeah, he plays it like,
okay. I'd love to be wrong about that. I'd love for Oz to notice her no matter what she's wearing.
Yeah. Well, and that moment takes a little bit, like that moment didn't have to be there.
Right.
It adds nothing. It's just a cute little interaction between Willow and Oz because we're slowly building that. But she's just, she's amazing. I love Willow in this episode. And I love her coming into her own power. It doesn't matter that she's wearing this, sexy garb. She's just going to take care of what needs to be taken care of. I adore it.
The Willow stuff in this episode is friggin' fantastic. Now, the episode does have some problems narratively. Like we first of all, we take forever to get it off the ground. just forever. It takes, like, we got this whole thing with, finding out what kind of women, Angel liked, and breaking in with Giles and getting Willow to steal the Watcher diaries. Then they're in the bathroom and they're talking to Cordelia. And then we open up. I mean, not to mention, we open up with Spike, videotaping Buffy, watching her fight, learning her style, right? So we set up Spike as the antagonist here. But he's not doing anything. He's just wandering around, happens to fall backwards into some chaos experience that actually allows him to come after Buffy, Yeah. But he's not the one who's actually driving, the chaos. It's Ethan, right? And and we have Ethan's relationship with Giles, which is sort of touched on. Like, we get the hint of it, and we get a hint of Giles' dark past, which I love. I love Ripper. Yes. That's one of my favorite things. So, I mean, that's really great. But like the antagonist focus is not clear. Mm-hmm. Had Spike brought Ethan Rayne in and asked him to do this, this was his plan, was to create chaos so that he could get to Buffy, we're good. Like, that's it, because then he is actually the active antagonist. But instead, we've got kind of these two antagonists who are sort of floating around, and neither one of them is actually actively trying to do anything. This is just stuff that's happening. So narratively, Halloween is not on firm ground, but with the stuff that it's doing, though, within that space, like, is actually really good. Like, I like the Buffy and Angel stuff.
Yeah, the Buffy and Angel stuff is problematic for me. I mean, we know this. Yeah. If you listen to Still Pretty, you know that I struggle with Buffy and Angel. But all right, here's the thing. Here's the thing with Buffy and Angel for me in this episode. Angel and Buffy have this date, and Buffy's late because she's slaying vampires. And I get how super weird this is. Your crush is a vampire, and you kill vampires for not a living, because she's not being paid, but a higher calling. Yeah. But Buffy makes this about her failure as a girl. Right. So that when he picks the straw out of her hair, which is such a sweet moment.
It is.
I love that. Mm-hmm. It's all about, she makes it all about how she's not the kind of girl that Cordelia is. Never mind that Angel's not really interested in Cordelia. And
Clearly.
This is where I really want.
Yes.
I really, really, really want Buffy and Angel to be the adults.
Yes.
Which is how we've been coding them. And have a fucking conversation. Mm-hmm. And I realize that if they have a conversation, then there's no story. But they need to talk about their relationship and what they want and need. And it seems like a weak conflict. Or like a false conflict. Or like not actually a conflict.
Yeah, no, it's not a conflict between them. It's an internal conflict within Buffy, which is, I mean, fair enough, a conflict that she has all over the place. It's not just about Angel. It's about, I want to live a normal life. I want to go to the dance. I want to go out with my friends. I want, she lies to Giles, right? About going out so that she can go to the frat party with Cordelia, So, I mean, this is something that Buffy deals with quite a bit. The thing is that Angel clearly does not care about Cordelia. He is obviously clearly interested in Buffy. And I understand, like, Buffy, while she's coded as an adult, she is young. This is her first like real relationship, and having those discussions is difficult for people who've been married for 10 years, like it's tough when you're 16, so like I kind of understand it. It is an internal conflict. If it was a false conflict, if they played it as a conflict with Angel, which they do a little bit, she comes in, Angel's laughing with Cordelia, and Angel doesn't laugh with anybody
ever, though.
Angel doesn't laugh with anybody. So they do kind of play the false conflict there, where she sees him with Cordelia, thinks Cordelia is the kind of girl that he likes, and and that's not who she is, because she has to be out slaying vampires. But the thing is, it's not who she is because of circumstance, not because of who she wants to be. She wants to be that girl. She wants to be like a nicer version, but Cordelia, she wants that life. But she doesn't have it because she has this, sacred duty that's constantly getting in the way of everything that she wants to be. So here she wants to be that girl, and she is presuming that Angel wants her to be that girl, which of course Angel doesn't. And they do have a nice discussion about it, at the end. right?
I do love that scene. I love that scene between them at the end. I think that is just, I love how it's played. I love the physicality of it. This is a very physical episode, which I may talk about in a minute, because dang. But the way she like sidles up to him and gets a little bit, like she closes the space between them in this really natural but very flirtatious sort of way that really works for me. I guess what bothers me, because I get that she's 16. I get that this is her first relationship in this way. And it's weird AF because, of course, vampire slayer.
Right.
But I think that just like Sunnydale sort of grows and shrinks according to what we need from the story in any particular week, it seems to me like at this point, Buffy and Angel's relationship has more or less friction depending on what we want to do scene-wise. That it's like that there are times, it seems to me like there are times where they do have a more adult conversation, and then there are times when the relationship is played in this very tropey, jealous high schooler sort of way.
Right.
I don't know. It feels odd. It feels inconsistent. I don't love it. I don't prefer it, is what I'm saying.
No, and I think that that's fair, because the thing is that forget the adult child thing. Forget that she's 16. Yeah. Forget that they're coded as adults, like all of that kind of stuff. It's an essential narrative thing, right? It's that when there is a conflict, we want it to be a real conflict. We want it to be based in reality and not false conflict. False conflict is, oh, look, here we have Angel who never smiles, who never laughs, just smiling and laughing with Cordelia, so that we can make Buffy insecure. But the fact is, that's not who Angel is. That's not what that relationship is. And it creates false conflict, because false conflict is the conflict that if two people actually spoke to each other, there would be no conflict. If she was like, oh, okay, so I guess, you're into Cordelia now. And he'd be like, nope. I was being polite, I'm trying, like, even if he was just like, I'm trying to learn how to be polite, because your friends are, for that kind of thing. Like, I would have been completely fine with that. Real conflict is conflict that exists even after they've had a conversation. And the thing is, you could still have this conflict, even if you'd had that conversation with Angel in the beginning, because this is about her. This is about the fact that Buffy doesn't want to be the Slayer. Buffy wants to be that kind of girl. And, and if he wants the Slayer, then does he want somebody who doesn't want the things that she wants but can't have? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still genuinely, that's the girl that I am. If you don't like Cordelia, you don't like me. Like, that kind of thing I would have been totally interested in. Like, that would have been a real,
been great.
Because that's an internal conflict for Buffy, and that's the thing, is that the internal conflict is always strong, because it's internal. It's not a misunderstanding, between an external conflict. It's based on a misunderstanding is, oh, I saw you laughing at Cordelia. I presumed that you liked her. I didn't think I'd ask you about it or talk to you about it. I just made the presumption and now I'm pissed off. Right. But when it's internal, like, you are communicating with yourself, even though part of you may be in denial and whatever, but it's like the conversation is being had because it's all internal, so it usually ends up being a more genuine conflict. It's just often harder to express in a film environment, in an external world, right? But I like that we've got Buffy's internal conflict here. I like the way she and Angel have that conversation at the end. I always enjoy, kind of how flummoxed Angel just is by all of it. He's just like, it's been 150 years since I had a relationship. The one I had before that was kind of toxic because, vampires. And, it's just like this whole thing. Like, he has almost less clue about what to do with this than Buffy, but he is always straightforward. Like, Angel is always, you ask him a question, you're going to get an answer. He's going to talk about things. He's going to be honest about things. I love that about Angel. It's fantastic. So I do really enjoy the Buffy and Angel relationship here. I don't particularly care for the false conflict that we've got, based on him laughing with Cordelia or whatever. But I like Buffy's internal conflict between the girl that she is, which she doesn't want, and the girl that she can't be, which is what she wants, know? And it's kind of fun to see her work that out into some kind of solid identity, which, as we spoil it, like she's going to be struggling with that through the whole damn thing. Like she struggles with that constantly. Yeah. So it's really fun, and I love Buffy and Angel. I look past the 240 year, or 224 year age difference, because at a certain point it just becomes ridiculous. But there is something with these two that is fun and interesting, and I like him a lot. So it's I just enjoy it.
He's growing on me. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's growing on me.
He's not Spike. I mean, I love Spike. Like Spike to me is everything, but what Angel is, like, I don't care about what he's not. Like he and Spike are completely different things, but what he is, I appreciate more and more every time I watch it. And I mean, part of that is because I'm doing Still Dead, the podcast on the Angel series, which launches for Angel in the timeline a couple years after where we are right now. And so like, I didn't appreciate Angel, I think, as much before really diving into the TV series and kind of seeing who this character is. I am liking him more on this run through Buffy than I ever have.
That's fascinating to me. I love that watching him on his own series is informing how you see him on Buffy. I think that's so cool.
He's got a strong philosophy. There's a strong philosophy behind Angel as a character and as a series. And I like that about him there. Here, at this point, you can see all of that kind of nascent in this character, but it's not fully formed yet. We haven't really seen it yet. While he's in Buffy, he's not at his best. He's at his best when he's in Angel. That's his show. Mm-hmm. It's about him. While he's in Buffy, he kind of serves to be a source of conflict for Buffy, and it's all about Buffy. And the person that he really is actually does not belong in the Buffy space. Like, he's not. When they bring him to Los Angeles and launch his own show, he becomes truly Angel, and in that space, like he and Buffy don't belong together for a million reasons. There's a million reasons beyond he's a vampire, she's a slayer. Like, they're just not right for each other, and that's fine. Yeah. They're fun in this time. They're fun in this space. I like the romance of it, but it's not the kind of thing. This isn't where he belongs. He belongs in the story that he gets when he's over in Angel, and that's when it's really, really good. So anyway, this is not an Angel podcast, but go listen to Still Dead and watch Angel, because I think it's amazing. I think the show is absolutely amazing. There's great stuff there. There's stuff that's a little difficult, and sometimes it's hard to get over the hump of the first season. But once you get through it, it's first 2 seasons, but once you get through it, it's really good. It's well worth it. It's well
worth it. Trust me, it'll be great.
It'll be great. But anyway, back to this episode.
Yes. Yeah. So you brought up Spike.
Yes.
And Spike is in this episode, but not really. I mean, you talked about this already, that that we set him up as the antagonist and then he's not. Yeah. But there's some really interesting stuff with Spike in this episode. Mm-hmm. At the end of School Hard, so Spike eliminates the Anointed One, and then he and Drusilla walk off away from the sunrise, and he says, "Let's see what's on TV." Mm-hmm. And I love that as an ending to an episode. Like, that vampires are participating in exactly what the audience has just participated in. We're watching a TV show. Brings us into this nice little self-reflective space for the show that it loves to do. But here we have Spike sending one of his minions out to the pumpkin patch with a camcorder. Yes. And shout out to old technology. Did you squeal?
I did. I mean, I'm more into computer technology when I see old stuff like a dot matrix printer or one of those big old desk computers from the late 90s. But yeah, I mean, it was a VHS camcorder. I mean, that's some serious technology. And then they've got these televisions in this warehouse, right, that are all hooked up, and there's a television on every side so we can watch the same video feed on all the stuff. I mean, that was seriously high tech for the time.
And it's seriously sinister. I mean, from the dude lurking in the shadows with the camera, taping this young woman who doesn't know she's being taped. Mm-hmm. And then to the warehouse with the the screen and they're watching in the glow of the TV. I'm like, that's another thing that I feel like this should feel dated. And it doesn't.
It really doesn't.
It really doesn't.
It's very odd. Yeah.
But I love this idea of Spike watching Buffy on television in the same way that the audience is watching Buffy on television and learning what she's capable of. And I mean, he's even doing critical analysis. I mean, he's talking about how tricky she is using what's around her. And there are two things that I really love about Spike's relationship to television. I mean, obviously it's self-referential,
right?
To the show as a whole, but it also connects vampires to technology in a way that we haven't seen before on Buffy, but is really part of vampire narratives as a whole.
Right.
Because vampires, despite being immortal and very much of the past, are contemporary in the way that they engage with the world, and that includes technology. So immortality gives them this opportunity to adapt to new technology and exist as modern creatures. And I think that's part of the reason that vampires continue to hold so much appeal for audiences.
Yeah.
Because they can be simultaneously, as old as you care to make them, and very much of the moment. And I think that Spike as a character exists in that space just so beautifully.
He really does, but most vampires I don't think do. Like Drusilla is very much of her century. She wears those empire dresses, she has the look of somebody who died in like the 1800s, Spike is updated. Spike, as we'll see in the future, like when he has a flashback, his style now is completely, he's peroxides his hair, he wears leather, he wears modern stuff. Spike dives into the world. Spike is living. He is part of pop culture. We're going to see later that he loves soap operas and he loves passions, right? He's always got a TV in whatever crypt he's in, he really is part of the moment. But I think most other vampires, and I don't know if you have an example of somebody who does live in the moment, but most vampires live in the time that they died, and they still kind of seem to be reminiscent. Like early in the first season when Buffy spotted the vampire because he was still wearing stuff from the 70s, right? They're like frozen in time. They're like those, women my age who are still wearing blue eyeshadow from the time that they were in high school,
That's coming back though.
It might. I wasn't into it then. I'm not going to be into it if it comes back. I have never been about the stylish moment. I always have my makeup has been the same, and it's always very, very neutral and very simple and not at all, a trendy ever. But I do find it kind of interesting that Spike almost seems to be the opposite of all the other vampires. All the other vampires seem very much stuck in the time that they died, whereas Spike really moves with whatever's happening. He is of the moment. And I like that because that's how he is in his fighting style. That's how he is in everything. Like, he doesn't think things through. He lives in whatever he wants to do in the moment, right? School hard. Sorry, couldn't wait for the night of St. Vigius. I decided to come and attack you now, because he lives very much in the moment. But I also love when he's watching Buffy. Like, I see him falling in love with her, like, from the beginning. She's tricky. Baby likes to play. You see that? The way she stakes him with that thing? That's what's called resourceful. Like, he respects her. He loves watching her. He respects her as a professional, Yes. And I kind of love that.
Yeah. I do love him watching her as a sort of, it's like on the line of male gazy and creepy and like professional colleague sort of relationship.
I don't think it's male gazy though. Like he's falling in love with her in a way that is not about how beautiful she is. And it's not about it's about who she is. It's what he's talking about when he's talking about her is not, oh, look at those boobs bouncing as she beats that guy up. Like, there's none of that. There's none of that. Like, look how pretty she is. None of that. What does he say? Look the way she stakes that guy. She's resourceful. She's tricky. He is admiring her for who she is. And the thing that I find interesting about that is that here we have this whole romance with Angel, right? Where Buffy is the Slayer. He likes who she is, but she doesn't like that part of herself. She wants to be the girl, and she thinks that that's what he wants too. And it's this whole thing, right? So the way that they see each other, they don't completely see each other for exactly everything that they both are, because he's saying, I don't like girls like that. But if Buffy had a choice, she would be a girl like that. If she was allowed to be who she is. Meanwhile, here's Spike watching her and just seeing everything that she is, and I like that. Like, I like the way that he likes her, and it does not feel male gazy to me. It has never felt to me like Spike is looking at her as an object. Like, I think he has always seen her as a complete person. And the more he sees of who she is, and because she doesn't care about impressing him, she never puts on airs for him. She never pretends to be anything other than she is for him. So he gets to see her exactly as she is. And I like that.
Yeah. I think for me, the creepy factor is the surveillance aspect and the spying and the way that her job in Spike's relationship to her at this point is to be observed by him.
Yes.
That he is watching. She doesn't know he's watching. I think that is where, I don't think it's the male gaze of she is there to be sexually appealing to him, because I don't think that that's what it is at all. But I do think that she turns him on in a way that other vampires don't. That she's it's not a sexual turn on yet. But it is a turn on, and I think that's what I'm responding to.
No, I get that. I think you definitely got a point. But I don't know, like, there's something about the way, like, the surveillance, I think, is absolutely creepy. That's not okay. Also, he's a vampire. He's evil. He's supposed to be evil. So, all right.
Right.
Like,
totally.
it's wrong, but it's okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's okay within the context of the story, because he's a bad guy. Now, if it was Xander who was watching her, we were pretending that was okay. Right. No. But because he's evil and he's supposed to be evil and he's doing a bad thing, then all right, But Spike is fascinating me. His relationship to Buffy is fascinating me from the very beginning. Yeah. And now I'm seeing all of these things as we're going through it again, which are so much fun to watch.
It's really nuanced.
Such a good time.
Right out of the gate.
It really is. Cool. It's very, very cool. I love badass Giles too.
Oh my God. Giles is so wonderful.
Cool is that? Giles has a dark past.
Woo!
I love it. I love that he's got a dark past. I love that whole interaction with Ethan, where Ethan's calling him out on it. I mean, it is just so fantastic. He's like, I know who you are, Rupert, and I know what you're capable of, but they don't, do they?
Yeah.
And then when he's beaten hell out of Ethan and like getting the information out of him. Now, I'm not a fan of torturing people for information because, as we know, it is not effective. And it's kind of weird because this is the kind of thing that in storytelling, I didn't really mind as much until reality, became so, and seeing Xander with a military grade automatic rifle around children didn't bother me years and years ago, but now, at the time, it was such a ridiculous idea that it wasn't upsetting. But now, because this is our reality, that people are bringing guns like that into schools, now it's like, it's so disturbing to see that. But I don't even, it's one of these things where I don't even blame, 1997 as not being aware. It wasn't even on the radar that wouldn't be a completely ridiculous circumstance.
Right.
It should,
unrealistic. And it should still feel ridiculous. It should still feel ridiculous and unrealistic. And the fact that it doesn't is chilling.
Is so disturbing. So, I mean, back to Giles, torturing Ethan for information. Like it's
Right.
one of those things that I don't particularly care for, but it wasn't until years later, and unfortunately not too many years later, when we started torturing people and trying to use those enhanced interrogation techniques, as a country where, we've lost our soul at some point. So I'm hoping we get it back. But I mean, even so, like Giles is tough and he's like beating up on Ethan, but he's not doing like too much damage, although he does kick him in the ribs, which is kind of fun. While he's cleaning his glasses, then he's like, boom.
Yes. It's so casual. Just like a casual kick to the gut. No big deal.
I love it.
I love that, but Giles is very much in protector mode here. Like this is violence against Ethan in service of and protection of self and others. I love that he says that Ethan accuses him of faking it, and he says it's not an act, it's who I am.
Right.
He really does care about these young people. Yeah. And I think that that's part of what we get here in that push-pull of Giles' dark past. I mean, when he sees Ethan for the first time and he says, Willow, get out of here, in this dad voice that's just, you do not argue with that voice. And,
exactly.
And she goes. But, oh man, Giles. And Giles, in contrast with the Giles who is so flustered and freaked out when Willow comes walking through the wall.
Right.
And
oh my God. I love
throws the index cards up in the air. I love that moment so much.
God.
So much. And then because we're doing things in reverse order, when Buffy and Willow are sneaking into Giles' office.
Yes.
And Buffy just completely just has no idea what to say and says, Miss Calendar said you were a babe.
I know.
And he just... Poor Giles is just like, what? What are you?
a hunk of burning what? And then I love the look on Willow's face, the disappointed look. You're using Calendar to do this to Giles. It's so fun. It is really fun. But I love how this whole episode, I mean, really is about identity. Because here we have Giles talking to Ethan. It's who I really am, and we have everybody kind of tied up in an identity that isn't really theirs, but kind of informs who they are, I think Xander's, fantasy of being a soldier, being tough after having that interaction with Larry in the beginning of the episode where Buffy saves him. And then, of course, his masculinity is completely threatened by that.
Right.
But then later on, while he's a soldier, he beats the hell out of Larry as a pirate, and he's like, that was really satisfying. Like
that sense of closure.
Right. Xander has a sense of himself as a tough guy. Like there is that within Xander, and Buffy discovers the real girl, if you'll, for lack of a better phrase, the real girl inside, and Willow discovers her power and her empowerment and the fact that she doesn't need to be hiding or encumbered by anything. She is who she is, and she can choose whatever she wants. And the sexy outfit is not necessarily who she is, but neither is she afraid of it, so she has this discovery of self, throughout this episode. And so I kind of like the way that we play with and expand upon the idea of identity being, both an internal thing and also expressed externally, in the costumes that we put on. And Giles is wearing the exact same costume. He is fully integrated. He is both of those guys. He is Giles and he is Ripper. I love that.
Yeah. And this is an episode that tells us what it's doing right out of the gate. And it does it in the best way possible, which is to have Drusilla say something batshit. You know what I miss? Leeches. I love it. But she says, don't worry, everything is switching outside to inside. And there are lots of ways to interpret what's going on here, vis-a-vis the spell. I mean, obviously they become their costumes.
Yes.
But the costumes are chosen based on how they wish to be perceived. I mean, and Xander even calls himself out on it. He chooses the gun from the costume shop, and Buffy says, that's not a costume. And he says, I'm trying to repress.
Right.
And, he's so you know, there's definitely something. I mean, it's super complicated about who you are, how you present to the world, who you really are, and then sort of the shadow side of all of that as well. That Buffy, you know, Buffy's core as her desire to be a hyper feminine girly girl is also part of what makes her so powerless. Xander's sort of recklessness is what helps save the day and move them forward. I mean, ultimately it's Willow who's calling the shots, literally.
Yeah.
You know, telling him when to use his gun and when not to.
Yeah.
But Xander, I mean, he's like, he is business. He's, you know, you stay here, you go there. We're on the move. We're doing this. So there's a lot of identity stuff coming out to play here. And it's really, really fun. And a lot of it is expressed so beautifully with the physicality of this episode. I talked a little bit about that earlier, but, you know, just the way that, like, Xander, when the soda machine doesn't work, punches it. That's his go-to, you know, like that's his physicality. The perfect Scooby-Doo moment of the peephole window in the library when Buffy and Willow are going to sneak into Giles's office and it's dark with the little Halloween cat decoration.
It's
and
so cute.
Their little faces appearing in the window and there's this delightful, like, tinkle, 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 we're sneaking around music. It's so great. It's so great. But that physicality of, like, showing, you know, show don't tell, right? Like, peek, like, here we go. Okay, we're like being sneaky now. And the way Buffy gestures at Willow to sneak into Giles's office and Willow just mouths no. They're so who they are in their actions. You know, from Willow crossing her arms over her exposed midriff to the wonderful moment when Xander walks through Ghost Willow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I love how that is played so much. She goes, oh, in this, I mean, it could be any number of things. Discomfort, surprise. Maybe there's a little bit of pleasure there having Xander walk through her. I don't know what it's like to be a ghost. I don't know. But, and then they both whirl around and face each other in this shit just got real kind of moment.
Yeah.
So they're face to face with the conflict and each other, and it's just it's beautiful. And I could go on and on and on about, like, how wonderful just the physicality of these identities. I mean, Buffy in her 18th century girl garb faints, and it's the first thing she does. She passes out, which is so antithetical to Buffy, just to just drop out of frame. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
But I think that's what she wants. She wants to be a girl who could faint at stuff like that, who hasn't been through so much. So I think it's so fascinating, the relationship between how you're dressed and present to the world and what that says about who you are.
Yeah,
you know, and how well that reflects. Or how you hide within those representations. And I think that, you know, Willow was hiding and she decided she didn't need to hide anymore. You know, which I think is really, really cool. So there's a lot of, I mean, for an episode that is as narratively, like, uneven, you know, as this is, which is always an issue for me. It has so much fantastic stuff going on, so much interesting stuff happening everywhere. You know, it's a really great episode. I mean, narrative is my primary value, so that's always going to be an issue for me. But the stuff that isn't about, you know, where we've got narrative problems is really well expressed, you know, and I love that stuff from Drusilla, stating the theme, outside becomes inside, you know?
Yeah.
It's very, very cool.
So here's a question, a narrative question for you.
Yes.
So last time with Reptile Boy, we had a pretty good narrative. I mean, structurally it was really spot on, but maybe not so great content-wise.
Yes.
Here, I think we have the reverse, where structurally
Yes.
it's kind of meh, but what we get is, I mean, for my money, really, really excellent. And
Yes.
I guess my question is, do you have a preference? You know, if
Yes.
narrative is your primary value.
Yes. Narrative is my primary value. Content is everything. If the content is good, no, seriously, like here's my thing. The sole purpose of solid narrative is so that you have something upon which you can deliver the content to your audience in a way that is accessible and clear. You know, when you have really good narrative, but the content is like Reptile Boy, right?
Yeah.
Reptile Boy was fine. There was actually some good content in there. It was nowhere near the level that Halloween is at, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that, like the good narrative and the content raises everything up, right? The fantastic content with the narrative gets taken down a little, but could be even better. Could be amazing if you'd had strong narrative elements and you knew what you were doing with the narrative structure of it. So my thing is that there is absolutely nothing about excellent content that is mutually exclusive with strong narrative. So strong narrative is going to make meh better, and it's going to make excellent even better. You know, so so for me, since good solid narrative is not mutually exclusive to anything, there's no reason not to have it. You know, everything is made better by a good, solid narrative. And I think that that's part of the reason why I feel so strongly about those narrative elements, because you have something great. Why not make it better? Sure. Why not do a better job with it? You know, but the problem is that so many people don't understand, first of all, how simple real like narrative structure is. Once you understand it, it's simple. Everybody complicates it, and they do these things like save the cat and the hero's journey and all that nonsense. Hollywood formula. Fucking nonsense, right? It's based in principles that are real, but it also adds in a lot of stuff that is completely unnecessary and that you do not need. So once you understand how narrative works, you know, you can make anything you're doing better at almost no cost. You know, like aside from your time and your energy and your, you know, your thought, right? But I mean, no cost to your story. Your story is only going to be made better by solid narrative. So for me, here I am watching Halloween. I'm like, this is amazing. The narrative is broken, you know, fine. It's not working great, but everything we've got, all the content we've got is absolutely fantastic. So when it comes right down to it, good content wins. But I'm always going to be disappointed because good narrative could have made that content even better.
I love it.
So so that's how that works.
Love it. So we got some patriarchy.
We got a little bit of patriarchy.
We got a lot of bit of patriarchy. I mean, I didn't go into the whole Xander and Larry thing and Larry's disgusting, you know, sexual assault pirate. I just didn't do that because I mean, guys, I don't know, you know, this is going to come out in a couple weeks, but it's been a week for sexual assault.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to talk about it.
Right. Like, let's just say it's there. It's awful. It's bullshit. Everybody listening to this has already had the primer in that. So let's just go ahead and move on.
It's gross. So moving right along.
So we have this instance in which Buffy comes out of the patriarchy toilet stall with a bunch of patriarchy toilet paper on her shoe and says, "It's come as you aren't night, the perfect chance for a girl to get sexy and wild with no repercussions." So we were talking about this earlier, that the fact that women are both expected to be beautiful and sexy and appealing and, you know, always fuckable, right? Like you have to be all those things. You're expected to be all of those things. But you can't do it while being sexy or slutty, because then you're a whore. Right. And you're judged for that. So here we have this active, like, you know, there's no way it's mutually exclusive. No matter what, you're, as a woman, you're going to get slammed. No matter what you do, you're going to get slammed. So Halloween is the one night of the year where you can dress as slutty and sexy as you want, and it's okay. Nobody is going to judge you or call you a whore. That is what she's saying.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, hey, the other 365 days of the year, 364 days of the year, you get called a whore for this. Maybe we should look at those days. She's like, yay, Halloween, sex it up,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And honestly, like, you know, we've all been caught up in that, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But this is why we
yeah.
have all the sexy, you know, stupid Halloween outfits that are like sexy pirate, sexy, you know, nurse, sexy Pokemon character, whatever. It's all of this stuff, which is so freaking ridiculous. The costumes that are available for women are just, hey, we decided as the patriarchy, we're going to give you one night a year where you don't have to conform to this double standard. So here you go. We still might rape you. I mean, please understand. You know, this isn't a day where we don't have sexual assault. Let's not go crazy. It's just that nobody's going to call you a whore until after we rape you.
Right.
So the whole thing.
And then
is
did you see what you were wearing? I mean, really?
Yes.
So, all right. So you have this obligation to be sexy. And by the way, when we say sexy here, we're talking about a very specific heterocentrist, male-centrist view of
male
sexy.
gazy sexy. Yeah.
Because sexy.
Hetero male gaze sexy. Yes.
Everyone listening to this podcast, I hope, knows this, but sexy is not a monolith. What is sexy for one person is not for another person. There is no, we like to pretend as a culture that this is one thing and that we all agree on what sexy is. No, you do you. Nobody knows your sexuality better than you do. And you have no obligation to be sexy to anybody. That is totally legitimately your choice to make. You do not need to be sexy for the patriarchy, but you also don't need to be sexy for anyone in your life unless you want to be. So that's my little sexiness PSA.
Well said, baby. You do not need to be patriarchy fuckable, which is the thing that we've all been chasing. That's what's on the magazines. That's what every beauty ideal that we've been sold, every impossible beauty ideal that we've been sold is about being fuckable to the patriarchy. And that is the first thing that goes.
Fuckable to the white supremacist patriarchy, because all of those beauty standards are Eurocentric. I'm not going to go into that. We all have access to the same Google that shit. Flips and tables. It's nuts. But
flips and tables. It is infuriating. Yeah. So anyway, that's the PSA. Go, Noelle.
Yes. But, and, not but, and, it's not explored. I would like to expand this Halloween narrative, Buffy's inner narrative. I would like to expand this to open up a conversation about internalized misogyny and the way that many women believe that in order to be a real girl, whatever the fuck that means, we have to participate in performative femininity, performative sexiness in this very one specific way. So I like this as an opportunity to discuss why this is problematic. And I like that Willow's narrative kind of starts to undermine it in that it is Buffy's remark about being sexy to the boys that inspires Willow to cover up, because that is not her goal. But I do feel like at the end with Willow in her sexy garb, that it is when she is confident in that clothing, not because she's wearing the clothing, but because she has been herself in that clothing. Yeah,
because she doesn't need to hide any element of who she is.
Yeah.
Right.
That is when she's noticed. That's when the headlights shine on her and she walks through them and she's, in her power, extremely capable, but also wearing her sexy outfit that she never aspired to wear. Buffy wanted to wear the enormous, pink cupcake dress.
Right.
But Willow was never like, ooh, yeah, I get to wear sexy clothes.
Yeah. There was never anything she wanted.
Yeah. 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 And then, my patriarchal moment, one of many, when Xander is confronting Larry about the way he's speaking about Buffy.
Yeah.
He says, "That's my friend you're talking about."
Right.
And that right there is
Right.
what's wrong with dudes who think they're doing the right thing. She's only
Yes.
worth defending if she's your friend or your girlfriend or your wife or your daughter, etc., etc.
Exactly.
That is
Exactly.
bullshit. Her worth
Yes.
being contingent upon her relationship to you, fuck you. And we see
Exactly.
that in the world all the time. That like, oh,
Yeah.
we have to respect women because mothers, or we have to respect women because wives and girlfriends. No.
No.
Women are
You
autonomous
respect
human
women
beings.
because human, you
Human.
piece of shit. And the fact that you have to be, in some sense, owned by a man, that a man confers value on you, whether he be your husband, your brother, your father, whatever. It is only because you are someone's daughter, you are someone's wife, you are someone's mother, right? That's what gives you value. You, on your own, no value at all. And that kind of language construction, you know, it reinforces that exact thing.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. Whew. I need some
right.
girl power. I need a girl power
All
chaser.
right, let's do some girl power. But unfortunately, like, all I have is everything Willow. Like, everything we've talked about this whole time.
Yeah.
Willow is absolutely the personification of girl power in this episode, and I love it.
She really, really is. And she
Mm-hmm.
is absolutely my favorite part of this episode. But my
Yeah.
favorite part within my favorite part is the entire
Yes.
scene when Cordelia comes into Buffy's house and Willow
Mm-hmm.
in full, like, get everyone on the same page mode, gives her the rundown. Okay, your name is Cordelia.
Yes.
You're not a cat. You're in high school and we're your friends. Well, sort of. Like, it's just
Right.
it's so perfect. And then Cordelia just looks at her like, okay. Like,
Yeah, I know. I
It's-
know.
wonderful. I love how quick she is to just,
Yes.
oh God, okay, here we go. So good.
She's so great through the whole thing. Willow is wonderful. And I don't know, I have trouble kind of picking a favorite part in this episode because there's so much really good stuff. But I think, honestly, at the end, when Willow takes the sheet, she wakes up, she's alive, everything's set. She takes this ghost sheet and she's about to put it back on. And then she just shoves it in the garbage.
Yeah.
You know? And also, one of the things that I loved in this moment, too, is that as I'm watching her, like, in the shot on the porch, you know, this strange woman's porch who'd been attacked by little tiny demons not too long ago, right? And she picks up the ghost garb and looks at it, and we know she's not going to do it. And I'm like, does she just leave that on the porch? Because I remember that she abandoned it, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't remember how. And I'm like, Willow doesn't just leave that on that lady's porch to pick up as she comes back from the hospital after being attacked by demons. And then she throws it down, and I look, and there's a garbage can right there. And I was like, that's Willow. That's my girl. Even in embracing her own empowerment, she does not do it at the cost to anybody else. Like, even then, she's cleaning up after herself and throwing it in the garbage properly. And I don't know. I love that whole thing. I love everything about
She's the
it.
best. She is the absolute best. All right, that's it for today. To join in the discussion on Twitter, follow Lani at LaniDianeRich and me at Noelle Aloud and use the hashtag StillPretty. You can also visit the Chipperish forums. Go to chipperish.com, click on forum, and join in the fun.
Or you can keep Chipperish Media going to the tune of $1 a month or more and gain access to the live chat in Discord, where you can hang out with me and Noelle and all the Chipperish patrons who are tossing eggs, keying cars, and bobbing for apples. You know, one pathetic cry for help after another. Visit patreon.com/chipperish to find out more.
You can also show your support by giving Still Pretty a great review on Apple Podcasts. Just scroll down, click on the 5 stars. It really, really helps people find us.
Yes.
Or you can tell your friends about the show on your favorite social media platforms. Or you can cast a chaos spell on Halloween. Whatever floats your boat. It's all good.
We will be back next time with Lie to Me, the 7th episode of Season 2. Until then, we were brought up to be proper ladies. We weren't meant to understand things. We're just meant to look pretty, and then someone nice will marry us. Possibly a baron.